Thank you all for coming. Deborah asked us to start with some of our personal projects, and so I just figured I would start, since I think they're fairly exemplary of what I do, with the two most recent exhibitions I've curated. And the first one was, as Deborah said, at the Salem Maritime National Historic Site. It was a collaboration with the National Park Service, great partners. I was introduced to them because of the work we do with the Harbor Island Welcome Center, which is also part of the National Park Service. And it's a beautiful place. Quite some time ago, I had this idea after having been introduced to augmented reality art, that I wanted to put together an exhibition of really big augmented reality art. And I wanted it in a place with just sort of green. Initially, I thought maybe a college campus would be the appropriate place, but I kept sort of pursuing that, and some things fell through and some things didn't ever materialize. But I mentioned it to one of the national park people I knew, and he sort of took it and shopped it around and introduced me to Paul Dupre, who is the superintendent of the Salem Maritime National Historic Site, as well as the Saugus Iron Works in Saugus, Mass., which is also a national park. And so I picked 4 really interesting AR artists and asked each of them to make 2 pieces. And I'm going to sort of talk over the video a little bit here, but you'll get a sense of what it's like. This is Tamiko Teal. This is her Treasures of Chez Rem, and it's a sort of an exploration of the ships from Salem were going for things we know what they wanted, but what did the places in Asia, China, and Japan want from the traders? Those faces you see are actual portraits by the first Japanese to meet the first Westerners. This is Tamiko's Garden of the Anthropocene, and those are very huge blow-ups of red tide algae. This is Kristen Lucas's Goodbye, sort of trading on the idea that this is a site of 300 years of goodbyes, really long goodbyes. And so these things fade in and fade out and say goodbye. And this is Kristen's Elephant in Room, a kind of a play on the elephant in the room, and the elephant never forgets. What she's doing here is really pointing out that the very first elephant in America came through Salem, came through the port of Salem. And these are all these trees of the elephant. This is John Craig Freeman's Virtual Russia. This is St. Petersburg. It is as big as the whole park. And this is part of his Virtual China, Wuhan, China. And it's also a huge, huge thing covering a great deal of the park as you walk through. This is Will Pappenheimer. Will took advantage of the fact that the software he was using can make sound as well. So this is his The Ascension of Cod. And this is his Privateers reenactment, trading on the fact that the ships in Salem were during the Revolutionary War called privateers and could act as pirates. And those sounds are really the sounds coming from this sculpture. Will did one other piece for us using his Skywrite AR app to put skywriting, augmented reality skywriting, up above the Saugus Iron Works. And actually the way it worked was the people who worked there came up with a number. The whole show was up for about 6 weeks, and they came up with 6 different statements about iron. This is one of them, and Will would trade them out every month. So it was an incredibly fun show. It lasted for from May 30th to November 30th, and it was very easy to take out your phone, and we had instructions on brochure here to how to see it. And I'll tell you all a secret. You can't tell anyone else. But the Park Service wanted closure, so we said it ended on November 30th. But none of the artists took it off their servers. It's all still up there. If you go up, and if you email me, I'll send you one of these brochures, or you can go onto our website and find out how to see it. So, they all said they were going to keep it up until the company Layar dies, which is sort of imminent. The next project that I just did this year opened in January, and it was artificial creativity, neural networks and augmented intelligence art. I did it with help from two friends of mine, Martin Wattenberg and Fernanda Vargas, both of whom are now working at Google. And they actually convinced Google to help sponsor the show, which was wonderful. And the idea, this was totally new territory for me. I had heard of neural networks, but I wasn't really familiar with neural network art. And it created a kind of an interesting curatorial situation. A lot of this stuff is awful. And when you're faced with a brand new technology, and it's not that brand new, neural networks aren't, but the use of it by artists is pretty new. When you're faced with a brand new artistic technology and 90% of it's just, is going to be horrible, as a curator, how do you find the good stuff? And how do you define good? I find this sort of one of the dilemmas of my profession. So I went in looking at lots of different work. Most of the deep dream stuff I thought was just awful. And if you know neural networks, you know what I'm talking about. But I did find some really intriguing work. This is Mario Klingman. We had 3 monitors of his up. From left to right is his music video, which in fact is a neural network. He plugged thousands of music videos into, and when you give it a song, it generates the video to go with the song. So it's sort of abstract. The second one was we were playing Daft Punk's Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger song for this. The second one is face feedback, and it's a GAN feedback loop that generates faces from scratch. So, and these are both videos that are actually happening. So I noticed that after a while, staring at face feedback, I saw every woman I'd ever met. And a few that with their eyeballs sticking out to the side of their head that I hadn't. And the third one I want to share with you because I thought it was particularly gorgeous. It's Mario's CycleGAN feedback loop. And he put a number of faces into the neural network, but then asked it to sort of generate it in a kind of a very hypnotic and beautiful way. So I like the way it doesn't sort of scream technology and neural networks and stuff. It's very subtle and colorful. And yet you still see the faces and you still see what it's sort of trying to do without really beating you over the head about it. Mario also did this very strange real-time generated piece. We actually got a computer for him to with Linux on it so that he could generate it in real time. And it was interactive in the sense that you see there's a microphone there. And it would change dramatically with sound, But when I told people that, they all wanted to just do something like that and watch it change, and it wouldn't. You couldn't see it. But if you actually played it music, it was seeking pattern in sound. And it would use the pattern, and then you could really clearly see the manipulation the sound was making on the event. This is Mike Tika. These are two from Mike Tika, two pieces. I See You in a Fleeting Memory from his neural portrait series. And this is sort of a fine example of what a neural network is. You take this sort of software structure and you feed thousands of examples of something into it. And hopefully, at the end, it can generate or identify what it is you're looking for. And in this case, Mike took thousands of Facebook portraits and put them into this neural network, his neural portrait series. And it generates portraits of people who never existed. This is Jessica Brilhart's Deep Dream VR. And I said that most Deep Dream stuff, which is a product, a software that Google actually created, is really awful because it's all done with still imagery. But this was a full immersive VR, and it was video, so the Deep Dream stuff would come into the VR and leave the VR. And I'll give you a quick example here. Oh, that's right. That's right. And of course, you have to remember you're basically immersed in this. When you look around, you look at it behind you, you see it above you, you see it below you. So somehow the video and the immersion mitigated some of the worst aspects of Deep Dream and made it really interesting to me in a way that the still imagery didn't intrigue me at all. Most Deep Dream still imagery is you take one photo that's what you want to generate, you want it to come out as, but you take another image that you want it to be stylized as. So an example is someone takes a picture of a friend and Van Gogh's Starry Night, and it looks like Van Gogh painted the picture of their friend. And it's sort of, that's about how intelligent it can get. Finally, we did one non-neural network piece in the show. We did a bot, and this is Moth Generator. It's a Twitter bot. If you tweet to @MothGenerator, it will tweet back an imaginary moth. And it actually, and my favorite part is that it actually tweets back an imaginary Linnaean categorization that it generates out of thousands of snippets of Latin. So they don't mean anything, but they sound right. So here's somebody tweeted to it, "Don't let anyone know about this moth." And it generated the "Don't let anyone know about this moth." And here's mine. I tweeted, "What's happening, moth?" And it tweeted back, the "What's happening, moth?" So there's mine. So that's two examples of what we do at CyberArts and what I'm sort of intrigued with in my curatorial practice. To find technologies that are of a certain emotive power, but that are just being sort of discovered by artists or are being used in long term, like video art and computer art, and to see how people use them and what the good stuff is and what the bad stuff is. So thank you.
So, hi everybody. It's really great to be here, and I wanted to thank Deborah for organizing this and the list for hosting it. And also, it's been really great to see some of the works in the show, many of which I've never seen before. So thank you to all of you for doing this. What I thought I would do is to just briefly touch on some of the works that I've made that have addressed technology specifically. So I'm kind of going to go in the Wayback Machine from George and go backwards into my history in technology, just to frame the work a little bit in that direction. And one of the first things I do want to mention is that I think we live in a time that's full of technology anxiety. When you think about even recently, all of the anxiety about AI and what might happen. And even going back a couple of years ago, I wrote an article for the Brooklyn Rail about technology. And there was a lot of anxiety then that all the mediums were collapsing one into another. So I think the question of technology and anxiety is a pretty interesting one to think about, especially when you think about augmented reality and what that might mean, or virtual reality. And so I hope you can keep that in mind a little bit as I take you back to 1982, which is the first thing that I want to show. And Emily, where are you? Oh, you're right there. Okay. So this is a work, I'll just set it up a little bit. And like George, I'm going to be talking over the video a little bit. All of these, I decided to show you video and not slides, only because I think the video gives a better sense of what the work is like. But this, so I'll be showing you 1 or 2 minutes of 6 different projects, and in most cases talking over it. But this one I won't talk over. Well, I guess I will.
There he is. I see him. Remember that? Can you pick him up yet?
No, we're not even close. No.
Okay, great.
Running up, there's always danger.
Oh, sorry.
You have all the time in the world.
I think I see her.
I do too.
Wow, for how much fun this is.
Hang on, don't get too excited. You lose him. It's all out of sync right now.
Oh, no.
Damn, you pay attention. This can get dangerous.
So you can kind of tell what this is about, video games. And you can start fast forwarding through it. I'm just going to fast forward you through some of this, but this was an attempt to bring video games to life, as well as to look at questions around masculinity, which were beginning to circulate in the art world at this particular moment, 1982. And it combines 3 different kinds of spaces: the video game space, the television space of watching TV in your bedroom, as well as the disco space where people are dancing. And it really takes off from Andy Warhol's notion that everyone will be a star for 15 minutes, because at the end of it, what happens is that the character actually he loses the video game and he gets blown up. And that's how it ends. This is them coming to get him. And that's him being blown up. It's actually better longer, of course. So I did a bunch of these kinds of things that dealt with video games. I was very interested in how the video game might be iterated differently than the arcade game. And right around this time, it became also possible to use the computer much more in video editing. For those of you who know the history of video, the computer comes into video editing right around 1980. And at that time, there were many different competing technological systems. And so I was very interested in seeing how I might be able to use that. And another project that I did right around this same time period was a project called Maelstrom Max Laughs. And it was really an attempt to chart some of these different kinds of of, let's see if I can get it to play. Uh-oh. Already. How do I get back?
And you put it into here. Oh, you didn't.
Where did I put it?
Oh, up here. It's
Oh,
on
okay.
the top. You took it out.
Okay. All right.
And then play.
Okay. And what I was really interested in at this moment was also the question of max headroom, because max headroom was the first sentient being from a video game who actually turned into a kind of hybrid of a human and a machine. Does anybody remember Max Headroom? Yeah, a few people, yeah. And so I was very interested in this character. I was also interested in the way information particularly can produce both alienation and celebration. And I wanted to really make something that, oh, now it's not playing. Huh. Did it stop? Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, okay. Okay. This is actually silent, so I can talk over it. It also built on the notion of the Turing test, which I was intrigued by in terms of trying to stage that. In other words, that question, what's human and what's the machine, that the Turing test asks. And so what I decided to do for this work is about a 2-minute loop. And I decided I would make a catalog of all the different things you could do using computer technology and video technology alongside older forms of animation. And for those of you who know it, I won't go through it and explain what's what. But this particular section where those letters fall actually had to be done live action, because in those days you couldn't do anything live action that looked like that. Whereas this particular animation is the kind of animation that you could make on a Mac circa 1985. And then it also took you through what I called a kind of ride experience, where if you stood in the right place in this video, it would take you through a 3D ride. And I decided to do something where the computer actually is shown in such a way that it pulls you into its space. And so, it really wants to take you, on this ride. And then at the very end of it, here's the ride here. At the very end of it, you come out the other end, and it talks about computer apartheid. But I was also interested in the notion of motion control and taking your eye places that your body could not go. And for those of you who remember Star Wars and those first asteroid corridor sequences, I was extremely enchanted by everything that one could do with those. And so I convinced a company to make this little thing for me, which was not easy. But this is the very end of it, and it ends with one of the first AI heads, and then with the computer and computer apartheid. So how do I go to the next one? Oh, perfect. All right.
You want to click here. Here. And pick
Oh,
your next
okay.
one.
All right. Okay, then moving up a little while in years, I also got very interested in sampling. And in particular, I wanted to see if sampling could function in video in the same way that it functioned in music. And so I made this project called Rouen Intermittent Futures Turing Machines. Is it view that I put? Okay.
Full screen.
Full screen, aha. So tiny. And then play. And at the same time, I was also very interested in fiber optics. And so I got a hold of a whole bunch of fiber optics, and I made 3 or 4 projects using fiber optics. And these particular fiber optics will actually let you project video and sound through them. And if you have some way of showing the video, such as a monitor or a screen, they will let you actually show the video within that kind of space. And so I would make these arrays of fiber optics. And I also, with a friend, Brad Mescal, wrote a book called Rouen Intermittent Futures Touring Machines, because the piece was initially commissioned by a site in Rouen, France. And you might remember that Rouen is the home of Madame Bovary. And I realized that one of the things I liked about this notion of sampling was that you could travel best by remaining stationary in a chair. And so each time this work was shown, and these are different iterations, we would actually go into the cities where it was shown, and we would map this book onto that particular city. And then we had a program that the wonderful Dave Jones devised that would allow us to engage with the program in such a way that it would actually interject the city where it was. And this is just a kind of medley of sounds from the piece. So it had about, I think, about 100 video sequences that would pop up, and then it would read this soundtrack to you as it played. And you know, because it was Rouen in France, we had to put Jerry Lewis in it because he was extremely important. Anyway, moving right along in my 15 minutes. Okay. The next work I want to show you, if I can get the cursor to move. Okay. The next work I want to show you is a work called Hard Cell, and it was made out of a lot of dead technology. I also became really interested in what happens to technology when it dies, and would it be possible to reanimate it. And for a show called Nostalgia for the Absence of Cyberspace that Tom Zummer did at Threadwaxing Space in 1994, I made this crate, and in the crate are all of these different kinds of dead technology that we tried to coax back to life by using small motors and things. And so it was this big box that was about, I think it was 8 feet by 4 feet by 6 feet. And in the box, there are something like 37 different moving parts of different pieces of computers that we've reanimated, things that blow up and fall apart, and so forth, and so on. And you, as a spectator, viewer, can walk around it and you kind of animate it as you move around it. Believe it or not, it's been shown quite a few times. It's a pain to set up because it requires a lot of mechanical attention, which I don't know whether people have. But in one of the sections, we really did try to make the computers talk to each other. And maybe I can scrub through this and get there just to show you that one section. And so some people actually thought that the computers were really talking and communicating, because we were doing, which we didn't realize, what some people have called glitch video. We were standing up in the editing suite and we were playing the video machine as though it was a pinball machine, and it would produce those glitches that you saw. And that was a kind of a mildly amusing thing for my collaborator, Brad Mescal, and I to do. And then the next project I want to show is from 1998, and it's called Speed Flesh. And it was an attempt to make an interactive 360-degree projection space and a kind of point of view theater where you as a viewer would enter this 360-degree projection space and you would be engulfed in, oh, that didn't work, sorry. This makes me realize I have to get new glasses. You would be enveloped in this space where you would see this story from 4 different characters' points of views. This was made as a commission for the Wexner and then shown quite a few other places. I'm going to fast forward through this. This was a show, George might remember this, called Body Mechanique. And there were maybe 30 or 40 artists. But this woman who's swimming is actually stretched about. Can you turn that down a little bit? Thanks. It's playing all the soundtracks simultaneously. But the woman in the water is actually stretched 360 degrees when it's shown. And so you as a viewer have a kind of driver. Here you can see it at the Wexner, and you can see how it kind of spins. It's hard to see here, but it's legible, but spinning. And you actually can navigate through the stories with a kind of joystick similar to a bus wheel that you drive through. And so you can look at the story from the standpoint of the 4 main characters. One of the main characters is a person composed of 4 heads, for example, that doesn't have a body, and there's a prosthetic character. There's a little girl who's escaped growing up, and then there's also a prosthetic guy with lots and lots of gear. And this band that you see is where they're located. It's about a 5-minute piece that you can play again and again in different ways. And then finally, I want to go to this game that I made actually for the ICA in Boston in 2003. So in 2003 was the moment, I think, in internet technology where suddenly you could do things dynamically using the technology. And I made this game called The Museum You Want, just as the museum was starting to think about its new building. And so this is sort of telling you about the things that happen. And then if you want to play it, you can press continue and sign your name and enter. And then this is how the game actually functions. And so it asks you a series of dynamically ever-changing questions about the kind of museum that you might want. And if you answer 3 of them, which I'll do really quickly, it will start to guess your answers. And you could also ask it questions, and they would be folded into the game itself. Let's see if I can get it to ask you some questions or guess your answers. I'm not reading them. Yeah, here it comes. And so that's it guessing your answers. And then it would also show you all the other people that were playing, and you could sort through it to see, to kind of gauge how well you were doing. I think I'm going too fast for there it goes. So it would kind of show you who else was on the game at any one time. And then it would also show you differences and similarities. And you could also see who else was on the game also by going to this area, and it would take you to, seems not to be, oh, okay. It would take you to, so you could see who had actually been playing it over time. And then you could also go to, you could go back to the main area, and you could also see the consensus. Whoops. Well, I'll just try to get to the consensus. Oh, I guess I will. I guess I lost the game. Will it let me back into it, do you think? Sorry.
Back into it.
Because you had it bookmarked, right?
Yeah. this. No, I
Yeah.
didn't have it bookmarked.
Oh, I thought you did.
Recently closed. The museum you want, where is it? Reopen last closed window. Nope.
Oh, well, anyway,
Yeah, sorry.
it's up on the website of the ICA right now. And the only reason it still exists is because the person who programmed it, Robin Bergner, who invented the 20 questions game, he's been running it on his website for since 2003, which is 15 years. So I think it's one of the oldest surviving web projects because it actually is on somebody's website who's really cares about keeping things alive. And every so often we show it in different places. And I think now it has a database of questions, which is almost 2,000 questions that it can come up with. So it's still growing. So I think that's it. I'm probably at my time limit. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.